What is this? Is this an Alexa? What is even happening here with this thing? Hi guys, Guinan64 here, and today we're going to be talking about Picard Season 2, Episode 7, titled Monsters. Before we get started, I'm going to preface with the same thing I prefaced in the last couple of videos, which is I am a longtime Star Trek fan. I've been a Star Trek fan since I was a kid. I really care about this franchise. There's lots of things that differentiate it from any other franchise out there, or at least they did. I do not like New Trek. I think New Trek is not Star Trek. It is a mediocre, terribly written, dystopian, nihilistic sci-fi show that is not Star Trek. That does not mean that people can't enjoy it. If you like it, you like it. That's fine. I'm not here to tell anybody what they should like or what they dislike. Your opinion is just as valid as mine or anybody else's. But this is my opinion. I think New Trek is not Star Trek on multiple fundamental levels. So I just want to preface with that before I jump into the review, because if you're enjoying Star Trek and you like New Trek, this might not be the review for you, and I just want to put that up front before I jump into the review. So we open up the episode, and we have a psychologist who is interviewing, giving some kind of psych eval to Picard, and we all know, based on what happened in the last episode, this is all happening in Picard's head. So he's talking to the psychologist, the camera rolls around, and we get Gaius Baltar, from Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, this guy, he is the psychologist who is interviewing Picard. And they're supposed to be having this conversation, and it's supposed to be kind of witty banter, I guess, back and forth, but it falls extremely flat, which is not a knock on these two actors. They are very good. It's a knock on the writers, as has been the case pretty much across the board this season and with New Trek in general. Writers are bad, and they write terrible dialogue, and this is not at all the worst dialogue in this episode or in this season, but it's supposed to be very smart and like witty banter back and forth, and it just falls extremely flat. And one of the things that gets mentioned here is Picard says he's claustrophobic, and that's why he spends time in space. What the You're claustrophobic, so you're gonna be in a ship out in the middle of space? This makes zero sense. Even if this was not an established character, the fact that any Starfleet officer would be claustrophobic makes absolutely zero sense. And besides that, in order to become a Starfleet officer, the amount of training and trials and things that you go through, there's absolutely no way that a Starfleet officer would be suffering from claustrophobia to any kind of degree, really, and still become a Starfleet officer. And it's even dumber because, again, this is just some made-up flaw that they're throwing at Picard. I don't know why. He's obviously not claustrophobic. He's been in closed-in spaces and turbo lifts and everything else, and that's never been brought up ever. It's just another thing that these writers don't know anything about Star Trek or the characters they're writing. So after this back-and-forth conversation, Baltar is like, hey, why don't you tell me a joke? Why don't you tell me a story? Picard starts telling a story about a queen. And then we kind of segue that into a storybook version of these dumb flashbacks that we've had all season that we don't care about. I mentioned it before, I'll mention it in this video. The fact that you have somebody in their 90s flashing back to some random childhood trauma makes zero sense. It doesn't make any sense when you have older characters dealing with childhood trauma randomly, much less the fact this is an established character. And this is supposed to be some kind of hidden trauma or something. The amount of psych evals he's gone through, all of the character development he's gone through from who we saw as a young Starfleet cadet to Captain Picard in the awesome episode Tapestry. The fact that he's had multiple psych evals over the years. Counselor Troy, a Betazoid. You're telling me none of this ever came up, ever. It just now, this... Anyway, needless to say, the whole flashbacks with the childhood thing is mainly what we're dealing with in this episode, and it's dumb. I don't like it. And young Picard's talking to his mother, he's kind of dressed like a prince, and she's dressed like a queen, and the whole time in this flashback, and I'm just going to throw this out there right up front because I find it frustrating, they're completely ignoring the fact that Robert Picard, his brother, exists, because he's not in any of these flashbacks. He's not mentioned at all. It's like his existence was wiped from memory or something, and his relationship with his brother and that relationship with in regards to his parents is an established thing in continuity, And the fact that they're just not even addressing it makes zero sense. Then again, Alex Kurtzman, Akiva Goldsman, the people running this, the writers they brought in, these people obviously don't know anything about Star Trek, or they know basic Cliff Notes versions. Maybe they read Wikipedia or something.
Everybody is always trying to maintain continuity, but given the 50 plus years of Star Trek, it literally becomes impossible. A literal impossibility to maintain continuity.
And I have rejected your explanation.
Anyway, the monsters show up in this storybook version of what Picard remembers happening, and him and his mother run down into the basement to try and escape these monsters that are coming after him. Then we cut to Rafi and Seven, and they're back on the ship, and Rafi's like, oh, what's with this Jurati-Rios relationship again? Nobody likes this. And believe me, I agree with you, Rafi. For one time in history, I agree with something that you said just about, which is nobody likes the Rios Jurati. Nobody buys it. But the thing is, and I wrote down this dialogue because this is another moment. I was like, I can't believe anybody wrote this. And I feel bad for the actress who had to actually deliver this line. So Rafi's like, now we, speaking of her and Seven,
now we are totally different. Our pain is beautiful and tragic. Everyone loves hearing about it.
And then Seven says,
absolutely.
And then Rafi says,
plus, we're the main event. Now, Jurati and Rios, they are like a side story.
This is idiotic.
That is one of the dumbest written lines that I've ever seen a Star Trek character utter. Like, it is ridiculous. I feel bad for them having to deliver awful dialogue like this. Is insane. Anyway, Seven and Rafi can't access the ship. It's on lockdown. They see some security footage and they see that Jurati is the Borg Queen. So this is to reveal that obviously she's the Borg Queen and she locked out the ship. Then we cut back to the Laris Watcher, and she's using this device that she mentioned before, and she's hooking up this device so that she can get inside of his brain and break him out of a coma, or self-induced coma, basically is the way they word it. But anyway, she's attaching this neural device to his head, and she says, I'm not making this up, she says parental controls disabled.
Oh, come on!
Why would you need parental controls on this device? You are a watcher. What the hell? Parental controls disabled. Like, seriously? After I heard this, I was like, that's not what she said. And I rewound it and I watched it again. I was like, I think that's what she said. So I rewound it again and watched it a third time, but I turned on closed captioning. And I took a picture of this just to prove this is actually what she said. And the closed captioning, see right there? Parental controls disabled. What is this? Is this an Alexa? What is even happening here with this thing? Why would you ever say this?
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Obviously, these writers don't know anything about writing sci-fi. Parental controls disabled. I can't believe this. So the Watcher, the Laris Watcher, shows up to help the boy, Picard, find his mother. She's now in his head. Then we cut back to Baltar, and he's still interviewing Picard. And again, the dialogue falls very flat. And you have two really good actors who could deliver witty banter and make this scene interesting. Unfortunately, the writing is just really bad. Like, these writers are not capable of writing intelligent dialogue. That's obvious. This comes across as like pretentious, where they're like, oh, well, this is really smart, but it doesn't come across as smart. It just comes across as pedantic. It's not good. It's not good writing. And when you have these actors in a room together and you cannot write something that's engaging, every time I cut back to them, I just wanted to fall asleep. And overall, it's one of the things with this episode. This was definitely not the worst episode of the season. There's worse episodes than this, but this was like one of the most boring episodes of the season, and it has also had some of the worst dialogue of the season. Anyway, the monsters show up and they attack young Picard and the Watcher, and one of them kind of looks like Freddy Krueger, and then one kind of looks like It. Like with his face all blurred out like a blurry clown or something, or maybe, he's trying to have his identity hidden because he's on unsolved mysteries or something. So the clinic lady shows up. By the way, they're still in this like modern day clinic for some reason. They never beamed Picard back to the ship. What? Why? This is so stupid. I mentioned this before. Why would you not beam him back to the ship? There's all kinds of medical stuff there that they could use. Who cares if Jurati's not there? All of these Starfleet officers have basic medical training. And that actually goes back to this, and I'm going to say this. So she breaks in, and she's like, what's going on? And Rios is like, well, you just have to trust me. And then Picard goes into some kind of shock, just so happens to go into some kind of shock or something when the clinic lady shows up. So she's like, I don't really know what to do, and I don't know what's happening here, what's happening. And so Rios just says, hey, beam me some kind of medical device. And then he gets the medical device and just hands it over to the clinic lady. He's like, here, use this thing. I trust you. And they're like, you just handed a medical device to somebody in the modern day. They don't even know what it is, to go and use on this person. As a Starfleet officer, you have basic medical training. And even if you didn't, you know generally what this device is. It's on your ship. You've treated yourself medically before, that we saw in the first season. Any knowledge, no matter how basic you have, is better than this person who you just handed some device that they have no idea what it is to use. This is stupid. Let's put it this way. If somebody needed a defibrillator, you could pick any random person off the street who knows what a defibrillator is. They just know what it is. Like, they just heard it, whatever. They've never used it, never even really seen one. Maybe they saw it on TV or something, but they know what a defibrillator is. That person is going to be better equipped to use a defibrillator than somebody from the 1800s who doesn't even know what a defibrillator is. If you take a nurse or a doctor from the 1800s and you're like, here's a defibrillator, they don't know what it is. It doesn't matter if they're a doctor or a nurse, they don't know how to use the defibrillator. It's just stupid. It's stupid. Anyway, Picard's stabilized from this device, and then the young Picard and the Watcher leave the dungeon that they're in. Then Picard and the Watcher meet up with Baltar, and Picard realizes, hey, this is a dream, this is something, and Baltar turns out to be Picard's dad. And Picard immediately just goes into, oh, I know you, father, you were terrible, you were the worst, oh my god. And I'm just like, this is stupid. Are they really taking it in this direction? I mentioned this in multiple previous videos. Are they taking it in this direction where his father is abusive? No. So I will give him props for that, and we'll get into that here in a sec. So his mother suffers from some kind of mental illness, and she basically was taking Picard down into the tunnels, and he was going to rain, and it was possible that he could have died. So basically his mother was kind of, abusing him, not on purpose, but abusing him through her actions. And, Picard's interpretation of the way that his father treated his mother was because he didn't understand, I guess, that his mother was going through, mental health. And yeah, from the perspective of a kid, I guess so. But the fact that he never would have found out that that's actually what happened as he got a little bit older, that's kind of crazy. How would he never have known that? Why did he just blame his father for, and it doesn't even line up with continuity anyway, because his father was shown in the episode Tapestry, and his father was talked about.
Jean-Luc, I told you not to go running off to that academy.
Father.
And his brother, who they just completely ignore existing, Rob Picard, was also in TNG as well, established. They just wrote him out, and his father's just completely changed to tell this stupid story that nobody cares about. Anyway, from all of this, Picard accepts, oh, well, maybe I never really knew my father, and that's kind of the end of that. That's all you get. And that's essentially the whole point of the episode. This entire episode literally just focuses on this one thing. So Rios then teleports the clinic lady and her son to the ship because reasons, I don't know, to show them the ship. Okay, so with that, it immediately cuts to Seven and Rafi, who are trying to track down Jurati, and they see we get a little flashback of Jurati walking through the city, which we saw at the end of the last episode, and she just walks into a bar and then breaks a window for some reason. It was pretty random, and then that's the end of that specific scene. You're like, why'd she just walk into a bar and break a window? Well, they apparently explain it as the fact that she was breaking the window to create an endorphin rush so that she could assimilate Jurati faster in some kind of way. I mentioned this in the last episode. Once you're assimilated, you're assimilated. What's with this whole extra steps, assimilation with extra steps? Like, what is the point of this? That's not how assimilation works. Then we cut back to Picard, and he's talking with the Watcher now that he's out of his coma, and the Watcher's like, oh, don't worry, Renee is fine. And I'm just like, okay, so at least there's a little bit of reference to the actual plot of the season, which is to stop this dark future, alternate future, fake mirror universe from happening. How come Q or Soong, they're not in this episode at all, by the way. Neither is the daughter, and I'll get into that here in a minute, but why would Q or Soong just give up? They just gave up. They're like, oh, well, Renee's fine. Okay, we're not gonna bother with her anymore. Like, the idea that they're somehow incapable of getting to her because she's now in isolation and prep for the flight makes basically no sense. You have an omnipotent being. Yes, his powers are on the fritz. He may not even have any powers, but he's still very intelligent. He's the most intelligent being on Earth. And Soong, who has tons of money and is also one of the most intelligent beings on Earth, and they just gave up on this mission to stop Renee from going to Europa. And the Watcher, who's not Lars, reveals that she's a Romulan. So yeah, there's that. And the Watcher throws out there that maybe Q is the cause of the memories, the reason why these memories come up. I mean, at least I'll give them this. The writers this. At least they tried to attempt to explain a stupid reason for why he's having flashbacks to his childhood, to kind of push it off on Q, and maybe Q's playing with his memories and forcing those memories onto him. Okay, at least you tried to explain it in some kind of way. I'll give you the minimal amount of props for at least trying to explain it.
The minimum amount.
And then Picard mentions this line about there's no better teacher than one's enemy, which I think is just a really dumb quote. Like, it's really stupid. It's supposed to be like this, oh, this is a smart quote here. These writers just are incapable of writing intelligent dialogue. It's quite obvious at this point. But yeah, obviously your best teacher's not your enemy. Now you can learn lessons from your enemy for sure. But the idea that they're your best teacher is your enemy,
I don't think so.
that whole line is just thrown in there to get Picard on the track to assuming that Q is the reason why he's having these flashbacks, or why these flashbacks started happening. And so Picard needs to contact Q. The Watcher's like, I don't know how to contact Q. So that brings young Guinan in. So Picard goes to young Guinan, who shows up again. Again, I don't necessarily mind the recasting. Here, I think they'd be fine. The problems I had with young Guinan was how she was portrayed, and the fact that they ignored continuity, and no explanation is going to explain away the fact that she should have met him in the 1800s. Based on the way time travel works in Star Trek. And it's disrespectful to the relationship that Guinan and Picard have with each other. Guinan, no matter what kind of change in the timeline would happen, would be able to recognize on some level who Picard is, and that they're friends. That's established. That should have happened, but it didn't, because these writers don't know anything about Star Trek. So young Guinan breaks out this bottle, and she's like, oh, we can use this to contact the Q. This is the same bottle that we used to make our truce with the Q. And I'm just like, so that's the literal bottle, or that's just a similar bottle? So you basically have this item that is of extreme cultural significance to your people, and it's just in the bar with you randomly. Okay. Anyway, we get all this smoke and mirrors types of effects, and Q's supposed to show up, and Q doesn't show up, and young Guinan's like, I don't know why Q didn't show up. Well, the audience knows why Q hasn't shown up. It's probably because he doesn't have his powers, so he can't be summoned, and that's kind of how that works. The audience knows that, but I guess, nobody else knows that. Picard should suspect it, since he kind of guessed that might have been the case whenever he initially got smacked in the face by Q. And Q's hardly been in this season. What is he? He's showed up here or there in random episodes. There's multiple episodes he's not in at all. He wasn't in this episode at all. He just gets mentioned in passing, obviously. But that's it. Like, the best parts of this season are when Q is on screen, and he's hardly been in it. So, and they hyped up the fact that Q's in this season, and he's hardly been in it. And this is probably going to give you an indication of how season 3 is going to be. They hype up the fact that the original TNG crew's back, and they're probably not even hardly going to be in it. Maybe they'll be in a few episodes here or there, or whatever. If this season's any indication of the way they treat Q, the marketing is just to get Star Trek fans to come back to the show, and then they're just going to do a bait and switch. And then, as I said before, Seven and Rafi are trying to track down Jurati, and you get the scene towards the end, and they're like, oh, well, we may have just unleashed a Borg queen on humanity. Yeah, I said before that this should have just been, like, this should have happened within episode 3 or 4, with the Borg Queen escaping and starting to assimilate. So, I mean, you guys are trying to stop the Borg from taking over, like a zombie apocalypse, essentially. That would have been a more interesting story, a good side story to them actually trying to save things, where they're trying to save the future, and you might have just made it worse. So you have to deal with things you caused as well as things you didn't cause. It would have been for a little bit more interesting story, but instead you wanted to tell all these side stories and side plots and just zoom around on all kinds of random things that nobody cared about. But the show actually ends with this guy walking down into the bar with Picard and young Guinan, and arresting them because he shows them video footage of Picard beaming outside of 10 Forward. So are we to assume these are just regular cops? Is this some kind of special organization like the X-Files that track down, like, you know, weird things? Is that what this is? Or are they actual temporal agents? You know, that'd be actually smart. You know what? They're not temporal agents. There's been absolutely no reference to temporal agents, even though they are in continuity. They exist in Star Trek. They've been in multiple episodes of Star Trek. Temporal agents exist, but they have not been mentioned or talked about or shown, and Picard and the other Starfleet officers would know and have knowledge of temporal agents. And there's even a temporal prime directive, so like they've broken that multiple times at this point. In summary, this is another episode that didn't need to happen. You could pluck out all of the childhood flashbacks we've seen throughout the season and pluck out this whole flashback episode, and it really doesn't affect the plot in any significant way. This is just useless filler that's not even good filler. It is poorly written, goes to direct problems with the pacing of this season, and these writers just can't write Star Trek. Like, not only can they not write Star Trek, they can't even write period. Like, they can't write science fiction. They can't even write interesting characters or a plot that makes coherent sense.
I don't think that's a little harsh. I think that's the truth.
The plots that they sidelined for this episode are Q, again, like he was mentioned, but Q is not seen. Soong, who in the last episode went crying back. He went back to his house to cry and drink, I guess. And then Soong's daughter, who they had this massive reveal about the fact that she is a science experiment, essentially, that she's some kind of clone or some kind of eugenics experiment. Some big reveal that nobody cared about because they didn't build up to it. She was introduced in episode 5, had a little bit of screen time, and then a little bit of screen time in the next episode where they had this big reveal, and we're like, I don't care about this character. You gave me no reason to care about this character. There's no build up to this, and it doesn't really tie into the plot in any significant way. It could have if you actually tied Soong and the eugenics wars into this season, but you didn't decide to do that. You just want to make convoluted stories, and these writers are just not good. They're not good. I'm sorry. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but they're not. And they prove me right every single episode. So was this the worst episode of the season? No, it wasn't. Episode 4 is still the worst of the season. But this is just another episode that is pointless. You know, there's multiple episodes and side plots and things that have happened so far this season that are completely pointless. We're 7 episodes in. There's 3 episodes left. Will they wrap up some things? Perhaps. I'm sure they'll leave some dangling threads for the next season. They dropped the season 3 trailer in the middle of airing the current season. I've never seen that before, and that's obvious that the fact that people are not watching this, that this is vastly underperforming in the viewership, that they're trying to get people hyped for season 3, and they're trying to drive as much traffic back to season 2 as possible. There's clearly not a whole lot of faith in Star Trek on this point from Paramount Plus, because why would you release Halo in the middle of airing Star Trek? Why wouldn't you push that to the end? It's evident by the articles that 1883 has been the biggest success for the platform, with Halo being the next biggest success for the platform based on articles they put out. Nowhere in those articles do they really talk much about Star Trek, and there's no articles that really talk about the viewership for Star Trek Picard season 2. So it's obvious why they dropped season 3 in the middle of season 2. Nobody's watching it. Hardly anybody's watching it. That's sad. Star Trek has the potential to be one of the most popular IPs, one of the most watched IPs, one of the biggest franchises out there. But you need brand new showrunners. You need to bring in writers who have written Star Trek in the past, competent sci-fi writers. Bring in some of the people who wrote the novels of Star Trek. Bring in people who love Star Trek, who are lore masters of Star Trek. Bring those people in. Let them take a shot at writing some good Star Trek, and you will see this franchise turn around and thrive. You will get some fans back. But regardless, what did you guys think about this episode? Comment and let me know. Did I miss anything that you guys thought was egregiously bad? Or was there things that you actually liked that I didn't actually mention? Just comment and let me know. Thank you, subscribers, for being awesome. Welcome new subscribers. We got 3 episodes left on Picard, so we're gonna get through this together, okay? Again, just thank everybody. Thank you to everyone who checked out this video. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geechu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.